Good evening and welcome to Freedom is a Constant Struggle with your host Kilu Nyasha, and board hopping is Andrew Montoya on this February 19th, 2015. I'm delighted to bring to you Ramona Africa via Skype from the Philly Cam in Philadelphia. And that's their community access station, and this, of course, is Bayvac Commons. Mona is the Minister of Communication for the MOVE organization, the sole adult survivor of the May 13th, 1985 government bombing and murder of innocent MOVE members. Former political prisoner as a result of surviving the bombing, and representative of the International Concerned Family and Friends of Mumia Abu Jamal. But most importantly, she's a committed revolutionary. Good evening, Mona. Welcome to Freedom. It's just wonderful to have you back.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and a welcome opportunity to allow people to hear about MOVE from MOVE.
Right, and for those, especially young people who and folks who don't get information from Philadelphia, tell us about the MOVE organization, its founding, its leader, its purpose, etc.
Okay. The MOVE organization is a revolutionary organization founded by a black man called John Africa back in the early 1970s. And John Africa proved to MOVE, showed MOVE, that there is just one priority, and that is life in a very real sense. The air that we must have to breathe, the water we must have to drink, the earth that feeds us, the principle of freedom, the principle of equality, because every living being comes from one source, our mama, our true mama, Mother Nature, and that we must be reverent of that force, protective of that force, and that nothing is more important than our mother, Mother Nature. And so this is MOVE's belief, the belief given us by John Africa. And MOVE people protect and defend that force. This is what has put us in conflict with this system, those running this system that don't care at all about life, even though it's the force that's keeping them alive. So it caused conflict, and MOVE will not compromise what is right. We will not compromise what is necessary. We will not compromise our God. And those running the system, their God is money and things like jewels and cars and money, etc. You know? So
Yes.
That's where the conflict arose from.
Right, and on your appearance with dreads and so forth, a lot of people might assume that you're an all-black organization. Are you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The MOVE organization from the very beginning has been composed of, yes, some black MOVE members, white MOVE members, Latino, Spanish MOVE members, Jewish MOVE members. I mean, your background, your racial or ethnic background means absolutely nothing to MOVE. The only thing the MOVE organization is concerned about is if you're willing to work to do what's right, whether you're committed to what is right and bringing this system down. That's our only concern.
And you call all of your MOVE members family and their brothers and sisters. Describe how that works.
Well, John Africa, MOVE's founder, taught us the true meaning of family. Family has nothing to do with a bloodline. We all got blood. What does that mean?
Thank you.
You have mothers that kill their babies. You have children that kill their parents. So-called sisters who kill their sisters or brothers. I mean, that's not family. Family means unity. It means being committed to each other, loving each other, and moving in the same direction, having the same common belief. That's what makes you family.
And you know, I witnessed that when I was in Philadelphia in 1995, when we were trying to stop them from killing Mumia. And I was blown away by the family ties, that the bonds that MOVE members had with the children, with each other, and I've admired for over 20 years now, or about 20 years, over 20 years really, how caring you are about one another, how you defend one another and love one another. It just, if blood families cared about each other and loved each other as like MOVE did, it would be a whole different world, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, the foundation of our belief, the foundation of everything we do is love. You know, everything we do out of love. People may have been convinced into thinking that we're violent, we're crazy, and all we want to do is fight and jump on people. That is not true at all. Our belief is love. Love of life, love of ourselves, love of each other, the foundation of love. That is the foundation of revolution, because the foundation of this system and those running it is hate. It's hate.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't do anybody any good. It's destructive.
I'm having a little trouble with hearing Mona, Andrew. Okay. I want to talk about the 1978 August so-called shootout, whereby 9 MOVE members wound up in prison with sentences from 30 to 100 years. And we've already lost 2 MOVE members who died in prison. Merle Africa, who died in 1998, and Phil Africa, who died this year, January 31st, I believe. 10th, I'm sorry. 31st was a celebration, and that's what I had in my mind. Yeah. And will you talk about that? And then I want to share a commentary by Mumia Abu Jamal in tribute at the celebration of his life.
Great. Briefly, Mayor Frank Rizzo at the time had a serious problem with MOVE, because MOVE, you know, was on him, exposing him, literally exposing this system that he represented. And he was determined to get rid of MOVE. In August of 1978, after MOVE people had been attacked numerous times by Rizzo's police, beat bloody pregnant MOVE women, beat, stomped, kicked into miscarriage, MOVE took a strong position and said, we believe in the principle of self-defense. We will defend ourselves. That is the law, true law. And when MOVE took that stand in May of 77, oh my goodness, you know, these officials went crazy. They didn't want MOVE setting that kind of example, you know, with people, giving people that kind of information and motivation. So what happened is our family members, political prisoners at the time, were released from prison, as was MOVE's main demand, the release of our innocent family members, our political prisoners. And And it happened without one shot being fired. Well, Rizzo was beyond himself that he had to give in to move because he said he did not compromise with terrorists. But he had to bring us, our family, out of those prisons. So he was so mad, so angry that he built up this lie about our home having housing code violations and that Move had to vacate our home. Now, the strategy of John Africa really exposed them because most Move people, a lot of Move people, were sent on other activities in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, in upstate New York. But when all Move people had not left our home by August 1st of 1978, warrants were issued for all Move people that were known of at that time, people that the government knew was not in that house, but they issued warrants for them anyway. And in the wee hours of the morning of August 8th of 1978, hundreds of cops armed for war vamped on our home with a plan to kill. We want to make that clear. This was not an issue of them wanting to come and arrest Move. This was a plan to exterminate and annihilate the Move organization. You know, they shot thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds of bullets in on Move. They tear gassed our home. You know, they used deluge hoses, that the firefighters used to fight fires. They pumped our home with close to 6 feet of water. They knew that all Move people were in the basement of Move headquarters. They acknowledged that. They also know it came out, the medical examiner's report said that the one cop that was killed, that was shot to death on August 8th, was shot with a bullet traveling on a downward angle. Now, Move people are in the basement. James Ramp, the cop that was killed, was standing up on street level. So you're talking about 6 feet above Move people out on the street.
Yes.
How could any Move person have shot him on a downward angle? Physically impossible. And then the city of Philadelphia sent a demolition team out to our home and completely demolished it. Now, this was the scene of a crime. A cop was killed. The house was evidence, vital
The crime
evidence
scene.
of the crime. Now, since when are they trained to destroy evidence,
Right.
destroy the scene of the crime?
Right.
And furthermore, if they even thought in their wildest imagination that Move had killed Officer James Ramp, they would have preserved every bit of evidence to prove that. But they knew Move did not kill James Ramp. They knew that. And they destroyed the evidence. They knew that they were going to railroad our family. They knew that. They didn't care about evidence, So our family members were arrested, known as the Move Nine. Each of the 9 charged with murder, even though James Ramp was shot one time with one bullet from one gun. They charged 9 of my family members with the murder of James Ramp. They went on trial, and I need to make this clear. It was what they call a bench trial, meaning a trial by the judge and not with the jury.
Oh.
And people say, well, how did that happen? Why did they have a bench trial with just the judge? Well, Move's position was that they were putting the burden of this whole attack on Move squarely on the system in the form of Judge Edwin Malmet where it belonged. They were not going to allow these officials to railroad move and then try to put the blame on the people by saying, well, you had a jury of your peers. It wasn't the system. It was a jury of your peers, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. This judge is supposed to be learned in the law, is supposed to be without prejudice and just go by what the law says. Well, he sat there through the whole trial, heard the lies that the prosecution witnesses, the police witnesses were telling, saw how my family clearly exposed the lies, and at the end of the trial, he convicted all 9 of my family members of murder, and then sentenced each one to 30-year minimums, 100-year maximum sentences. A day or two after sentencing my family, Judge Malmet went on a radio talk show, Philadelphia radio talk show, and Mumia Abu Jamal heard him. So he called in and he asked Judge Malmet one question. Who killed Officer James Rand on August 8th of 78? Judge Malmet replied, and I quote, I haven't the faintest idea. Now that's what he said after convicting my family members and sentencing each of the 9 of them to 30 to 100 years in prison. Now, how do you get past that? What possible explanation is there of that? Whether you're a judge or a juror, if you convict someone, you are obligated to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that that person is guilty. Saying you haven't the faintest idea does not imply that you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. So, and I think this would be a good time to hear Mumia's commentary and tribute to Phil Africa.
Absolutely. Phil was one of the Move 9 in jail for 36, almost 37 years for a crime he didn't commit.
Brother Phil Africa, Move member, 1956-2015. He was born William Phillips on January 1st, 1956, but few people called him by that name. Most people knew him as Phil, and after joining the revolutionary naturalist Move organization in the early 1970s, most called him Phil Africa. He was part of the confrontation of August 8th, 1978 in Philadelphia, where nearly a dozen Move members were charged in connection with that conflict, in which a cop likely died from friendly fire, but Move members were charged. Among them, Phil Africa. Phil was among 9 Move men and women charged with murder and convicted in a hotly disputed trial of third-degree murder. So disputed, in fact, that several days after trial, Judge Edwin Malmet would admit in a locally broadcast interview that he hadn't the faintest idea, his very words, who killed the cop. The 9 Move members were sentenced to 30 to 100 years, the longest in Pennsylvania history since third-degree murder became law in Pennsylvania. Judge Malmet reportedly acknowledged the illegality of such a sentence, telling them that it may be reversed on appeal, but for now it would hold them. It appears Malmet believed the state appellate courts were fairer than even they believed. Not the people named Africa, it seems. For today, 37 years after the events of August 1978, the fact that 7 remaining men and women are still in prison is nothing short of a scandal. The Move men and women should have been free at least over 7 years ago when they reached their minimums. But this is Pennsylvania, where madness passes as normality. Phil lost a son back in the mid-70s when police trampled his child, Life Africa. On May 13th, 1985, when the police bombed the Move house, another son, Little Phil was among the 11 people shot and burned to death. Phil was an extremely talented artist and painter. He was a man with a gift of lightness, a witty sense of humor, and also seemed to smile always. Phil Africa, MOVE member, will be long loved and remembered by his wife, Janine Africa, by his MOVE brothers and sisters, and by many, many prisoners. Phil lived through 59 cycles of planet Earth before being returned to his mother. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
And of course, that was Mumia Abu Jamal with a tribute to Phil Africa, who died mysteriously on January 10th of 2015. I'm interviewing Ramona Africa via Skype from Philadelphia, Philly Cam. And so we're back. Mona, I want to ask you to talk about Phil and who he was. Describe him. He's a father, he was a husband, and a wonderful person from everything I've heard. And I would just like to say that I received a beautiful, one of his wonderful paintings.
Phil was indeed a father, a grandfather. In fact, Phil and his wife Janine lost 2 children to this system. The first one was a 3-week-old baby boy that was knocked from Janine's arms by police and trampled to death on March 28th of 1976. And then Phil and his wife lost a second child, little Phil Africa, in the May 1985 bombing. Phil was strong. He was very outgoing. I mean, I don't think any MOVE person wrote and called and reached out to people more than Phil. I remember John Africa, MOVE's founder, saying that Phil was a preacher for this organization because he could just reach out to people, counsel people, talk to people. I mean, that's just who he was, you know?
Right.
And that's why so many people loved him. That's why so many people, you know, just gravitated to him and knew him so well. Because, I mean, he wrote everybody. He called everybody. If you jotted Phil a note, you were going to get a note back from him. You know, that's just who he was. A wonderful, warm, family-oriented brother. Nothing was more important to Phil than family.
Right.
You know?
And talk about his artwork.
Oh, my goodness. When Phil first started his artwork, he was okay, but he wasn't that great. But he loved it, so he kept at it. And you can just see his improvement, you know, over time. Oh, man. Within the last few years, his artwork was wonderful. It was spectacular. And he was always sending it out to people, not asking people to buy it from him or anything. People that were out here working, resisting this system, fighting back, Phil would send them artwork because he wanted to.
Right.
That's who he was.
Yes, yes. And I feel so blessed, and I'm going to find it, the piece that he sent me. But
one thing we tell people, Keita, is that John Africa explained that we are living beings. We're alive. So we have feelings. And because we have feelings, we can be hurt. Our feelings can be hurt.
Absolutely.
So the important thing to remember is that while we can be hurt, we won't be stopped. And that's what's important. You know, to grieve, to feel loss, you know, to feel the hurt, but never ever allow it to stop you.
Right, to abandon the struggle for true liberation.
Exactly.
Yes. I want to talk about Merle Africa, who also died in prison. And she died, I believe, in 1998. Is
Yes,
that
March
correct? I
1990.
remember that so well. It just was so painful, and I can imagine the pain that the Move family felt at losing Merle. Talk about Merle.
Merle, the best word to describe Merle to me was sweet. She was just so sweet. And her laugh was infectious. You know, she loved the babies. I mean, before going to jail, she was always picking up one of the babies, kissing them, laughing. Um, if people wrote Merle, she wrote them back. She was like Phil in that area. She would write people back. She was the administrator for the organization. She kept news articles, notes on everything that was happening. She was on top of things.
Right.
And, we really, really felt her loss. And because she was the first Move person to pass away in prison, you know, it really affected us
I'm sure it
because,
did.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. And her death was mysterious as well.
absolutely. Basically, the same kind of situation. Merle had complained of some stomach cramps, and Phil had complained of some stomach cramps. Um, they took Merle out to the hospital, just like they took Phil out to the hospital when he had been doing stretches, jumping jacks, talking to people. They took him out to the hospital, and with both of them, you know, we got word from the hospital after they took Merle there that she had passed away. With Phil, they held him incommunicado. He could not get a phone call, no visits, and we kept pressure on the hospital and the prison. And they finally arranged for Phil to call his wife Janine, who is also one of the Move Nine and has been in prison the last almost 37 years. It'll be this August. Um, and when Janine talked to him, when he finally got that call, and Janine talked to him, she told us they had him drugged up. He was like incoherent. He couldn't really understand what she was saying, and he couldn't really express himself, couldn't really talk. So our position is, how do you go from A to Z in about 5 days? When he went to that hospital, he was talking, he was mobile, he was exercising and stretching. How did he go from that to incoherent? You know? How did that happen?
Yeah,
In
really.
a hospital where they're supposed to make you well, not
Right.
worse than you were when you came in here.
Right. And he was only 59 years old. How do you die of natural causes at 59?
Yeah, and Merle was only 47.
Right, and they
You know?
claim the same thing, right? The natural
Yes, yes.
causes.
And what does natural causes
Yes,
mean?
really.
I mean, exactly.
People
What are
die
you
of
talking?
natural causes in their 80s and 90s, and
And even that, they say natural causes, but what exactly are you talking about?
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why we are really serious and upping our activities to bring our family home.
Yes,
We don't
because
want to see another Move person die in those
there's
prisons,
still
or
seven Move
other
members.
political prisoner, or any other political prisoner, because too many have died in prison. And this country here, it goes crazy talking about ISIS and how they're saying ISIS, is killing people, assassinating people. You know, well, they dropped the bomb on
Yes.
my family on Move and burned babies alive. So what are you talking about? How do you dare point your finger at somebody else? How do you do that?
Let's talk about the 1985 bombing of Move. It just kind of blows your mind that they literally dropped a bomb on Move Organization May 13th, 1985. Let the fire department and the city officials allowed the fire to burn 60 row houses, 60 or 61 row houses owned by black people in Philadelphia, and 11 Move members died in the fire because every time somebody came out, they were shot. He or she was shot at. The 11 people included 5 children, and only you, Ramona Africa, and Birdie Africa, a child, survived it. And you survived it with some serious burn.
Yeah.
And were charged with everything and had to do 7 years in prison, and you had to do 7 years because you refused to renounce Move. Will you talk about that?
Okay. The very telling part of what happened on May 13th is the fact that the fire department, who was out there from the very beginning, putting tons of water in our house on us as the first mode of attack. For hours, they poured water in our house with their deluge hoses. But at the point that the bomb squad dropped that bomb on our home and it ignited a fire, and they admit that they knew that there was a fire on our roof, they did nothing to put the fire out. They did not turn those same deluge hoses on our home to put the fire out. And it makes it clear that their intent was to kill, not to arrest, but to kill every living being in that house.
I know.
When we realized our home was what happened?
I don't know what happened.
So just reiterate that part.
Just if you could just reiterate that last part, and thank goodness this isn't live. Yeah, he'll have an editing job, but we'll work it.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay. It's very telling that their intent was to kill every living being in our house. They were not out there to arrest us, because when we tried to get ourselves, our children, our animals out of that blazing inferno, once we realized that our home was on fire, the police, the cops in the back, started shooting at us. They did not intend for anybody to survive that attack. They planned to kill everybody in our home, just like they did in 1978, which is why in 85 they came with a bomb, because they were pissed off that they didn't kill Move people in 78. So they came with a bomb in 85 because they were determined to do what they had failed to do in 78. But meanwhile, our family members, the Move 9, Mumia Abu Jamal, and numerous other freedom fighters are in prison, have been in prison for decades, being called murderers, but nobody involved in the murder of my family did a day in jail. They were never even charged with anything. And they burnt babies alive.
Mona, yeah.
Real murderers.
Yes, they are murderers. Talk about the lawsuit that was filed in what year?
The lawsuit was filed in 1986, I think, and did not go to trial until 1996. And that was after I had gotten out of prison during my maximum sentence. Um,
And you did
it
7 years. And you did 7 years in prison.
yeah, yes. Um, there was a long list of defendants in that lawsuit. I mean, the mayor, the state police, the Philadelphia police, FBI, who supplied the C4 military explosive that they dropped on us, the managing director. I mean, a long list. By
And the
the
mayor
time
was, what's his name? Good.
Wilson Good,
Wilson Good was really bad. And he was a Negro.
yeah, yes,
Is a
yes,
Negro, I should say.
mm-hmm, yes. Um, by the time we went to trial, the courts had dismissed with immunity everybody in my lawsuit except the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, and the city of Philadelphia. The jurors, who were predominantly white suburban jurors, because it was a federal trial, um, they found all three of them liable, found them guilty. And when they did that, they ordered the city of Philadelphia to pay me $500,000. Now, I remember a woman who spilled hot coffee on herself in McDonald's getting at least $1 million. You
Right.
know,
I remember that case. Right.
and we made it clear that this was not about money, but it tells you, you know, how this system feels about poor black people. You
Yes,
know,
really. Well, we know how it feels about black people today, especially.
yeah, they ordered the same jury ordered the fire commissioner and the police commissioner to pay $1 each every week for 11 years. Now, that's what they were supposed to pay. When the judge heard that, he granted immunity to the fire commissioner and the police commissioner. So they didn't even have to pay that $1 a week.
Oh my goodness. That's just
Now, if
mind
he
boggling.
felt like they deserved immunity, why wasn't that done with everybody else he gave immunity to before the verdict? You know, after the verdict, after the jurors sit through the whole trial and render their verdict and damages and all that, then he comes and say, yeah, right, they're not paying anything. They're not going to be held responsible.
That's, well, privilege and immunity. We know about that.
Well,
Um,
that's what passes for justice in America.
yes. And no justice, just us.
Yes. Yeah.
But before we run out of time, I really wanted to talk about you and the fact that I believe it's Chuck is your husband, Chuck Africa,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and he is one of the MOVE members still locked up in prison.
Yes. Yes, he is.
And you visit him on a regular basis, no doubt.
Uh, I have to make something clear here. Um, Chuck has some issues, and he has decided that he wants to do things his way. And we made it clear, Move made it clear that he can do things his way if he decides to, but he just can't do things his way in Move. That we go by the strategy, the teachings of John Africa. So Chuck is having some issues right now, and he has to work that out himself.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I touched
Now,
on
he
it.
just have to make it clear because people that might be in touch with him, we can't afford to have them thinking that he's doing things Move's way, that he's committed to Move when he's not.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question I had, or that I wanted you to talk about, was children. Move family have lots of children and lots of grandchildren. Will you talk about the children? I met some of the children in '95 who are now grown, and beautiful children, so healthy, so friendly, so conscious. I was just thrilled.
Uh, I'd like to start off by saying how Move came under heavy criticism from the beginning of Move and for years after about how we raised our children. People had their opinions about what we should be doing and should not be doing with our children.
Right.
But proof is in the pudding. And Move children are loving children, strong, healthy children, clear about their direction. It is not Move children that you will ever hear about or read about setting cats on fire at Halloween, or putting puppies in an oven and cooking them, or, doing anything like that. Move people find puppies, Move kids find puppies or kittens and bring them home to take care of them. They don't wrap a coat hanger around their leg and attach them to a car, so that they can be dragged and killed. Move kids are not like that. They don't do those things because of our belief, the teaching of John Africa. They are very loving children. And we homeschool our kids. We don't turn our children over to this system, to our enemy, and hallucinate that they're going to teach our children something worthwhile, that they are going to educate our children. We don't do that. Our children are homeschooled, and they learn what they need to know to survive in this system in terms of reading and, counting, math, writing, what they need to know. But what they are really taught, not only in words but through example, is life being the priority. Does not matter if you can spell the word air. What matters is you realizing the importance of the air and protect the air against poison and pollution. So that's what our children learn. That is their foundation, and that's what makes them so loving. Life is their priority.
Right, and they learn to share, and they learn to love one another, to love animals, to love humans, to love life. And I've met them, I met some of them in Philly in '95, and I was blown away by the Move children. They're just wonderful people. And just take a minute and talk about how many grandchildren you have now and how many Move kids. Can you count them?
No, I can't. I don't know exactly how many, but I would say at least 35, maybe, if they're all added together.
35 grandchildren?
Children and grandchildren.
All right. Well, that's wonderful to know, because we need more life lovers in the world.
Absolutely, and it is an example to this system, because they thought that May 13th was like the end of Move, that, we would never recover or anything. But Move is stronger today than we were 30 years ago in May of '85. And there are more children in Move today than there was in '85,
Right.
because the family just keeps growing.
Right on. Well, Ramona, I want to give you a few minutes to wrap up and, talk about the celebration that's coming up, of the anniversary and so on.
Yes, May 13th of this year marks 30 years since the bombing and murder of our family. And we do something every May 13th. But we usually tell people if you can't come to Philly, do something where you're at. This year, to mark the 30-year celebration, commemoration, um, we're encouraging people, urging people to come to Philadelphia. We want to send a message to this system. We want people to flood Philadelphia and let these officials know that people have not forgotten. They're still angry about what happened, and send that message, let these officials know how people feel about what happened. So we have a wonderful program lined up. We have a filmed message from Angela Davis, a film message from Alice Walker. We have Ward Churchill coming in, Cornel West, Chairman Fred Hampton, and just a wonderful, wonderful group of people that are coming to commemorate with us. So May 13th, 1985 to May 13th, 2015, 30 years later, Move is that much stronger, 30 years stronger. So come and join us on May 13th of 2015.
I so wish I could come because I miss you and Pam and other Move members. And I just want to thank you so much, Ramona, for being our guest here on Freedom is a Constant Struggle. And we also, one quick thing about Mumia Abu Jamal. What's happening right now with his case, very briefly?
Well, not too long ago, I can't remember exactly when, but state officials passed a legislation basically forbidding Mumia and any other prisoner or former prisoner from speaking out about their cases, about what was happening with their cases. And it's called the Revictimization Something Act. And there's a big, movement around that because it doesn't just affect Mumia. It's called the Revictimization Relief Act because apparently Maureen Faulkner, Daniel Faulkner's widow, gets so upset. She gets so upset when she hears Mumia's voice on the radio. In the words of Mumia, well, I feel sorry for her that she doesn't know how to turn the station. That's all she has to do. How are you going to tell people that they can't talk, can't speak out?
Well, so much for the First Amendment and free speech in America.
Exactly.
And they had all these people marching in Paris talking about free speech. Hello. What a contradiction. Thank you again, Ramona, and thank Andrew Montoya for board opping, and thank you, viewers, for tuning in to Freedom is a Constant Struggle. We'll be back on March 5th with Dorothy Roberts.